Benjamin Castle are Americans. Watching the footy.
Liam Ryan saying, kick it my way, I want to jump over the pack, and here he comes! Ryan!
This is Buddy Franklin! This is the greatest showman!
Got the handball off to Myers. Myers looking for the lead of Stengel. Gee, they're good. Gee, they're sharp. Razzle dazzle Rioli.
Oh, who else? McDonald!
From inside the centre square. Boys kick the goal. Boys kick the goal. From inside the centre. I can't believe that.
And once again, good time of day wherever and whenever you're listening. This is episode 205 of Americans Watching the Footy, and it is the second half of our So You Didn't Crack the 8 special, which, believe it or not, I know it's a bit of a misleading title. It's about the teams that aren't playing finals this year. What? Yeah. Sorry for the big spoiler. I'm Ethan Castle, coming to you from South San Francisco, California.
His cat, Graham Harambe, is sleeping at his feet. I am Benjamin Castle, coming to you also from South San Francisco, California. Though by the time this is produced, I will be back in San Diego for my fall semester in my Master's of Teaching credential program. So I'll look a nerd. I'll be enjoying finals from down there. Might venture up to LA for the grand final watch party with the LA Dragons. But yeah, last in-person episode perhaps of 2024 for us. And if you're wondering, my winter break is very short for multiple reasons.
Yeah, we'll continue with the details of that as they become more known. But
yeah, once my final schedule is clear, I'll be setting up my walk, which is from San Diego to Los Angeles. Thanks, Saints.
So we randomly selected each of the teams for the order that we're doing this. Last episode was much more teams that came close to playing finals, or at least had hope at least halfway through the season. This one's not, but I'm actually really looking forward to this mix of teams because I think I've got pretty strong opinions and new discoveries about just about all of them. So let's do it.
Yeah, it's the bottom four plus a team that was in the bottom six right up until the last round. And we are starting with, oh, this is close, North Melbourne. Home to one more win each of these past 2 years than Dawson's.
And I just extended Will Phillips for next year.
Good.
North once again finished 17th at 3-20, percentage 63.5, which is significantly worse than last year.
It doesn't feel like that. It's down by just under 8%, despite how a lot of the season felt for them, because these Coyotes had 3 losses by less than a goal, 2 in back-to-back weeks against Collingwood and Melbourne, and then the blown game at Blundstone Arena against the Eagles, which I still find hard to believe. None of their wins were by more than 13 points. They beat the Eagles by 9 at Perth at round 13. They beat the Suns at Marvel at round 17 by 4. And then round 21 at Marvel against Richmond by 13. What I can gather about this team is just Harry Sheezel is North Melbourne. And these teams' fortunes changed for the better. As soon as he was freed up, he started the year at halfback like he'd normally been. And then Clarkson realized what he had on his hands, had Zach Fisher be that main distributor from halfback when he was healthy, and just let Sheezel roam. And that unlocked all their success, essentially. It was very telling when he was out.
So, big picture, despite the lack of movement on the ladder and lack of, results on paper from last year, I think we're starting to see the core for this team take shape. The next step is I want to see a couple more wins. I want to see fewer games where they just get the crap beaten out of them, because they had a few, especially at the end of the year and back at the start of the year, where they just got slaughtered.
Well, they lost in the final round by triple digits, again, without Sheezel.
Yeah, there was a lack of interest in that game. This was a team that was clearly like on 1-2-3 Cancun. But I like kind of where things are heading here. Not just with the top, the obvious guys, the Sheezels and Davies, Uniacks, but we're starting to see that next tier of guys, whether that's Tom Powell and Bailey Scott, or defensively behind Charlie Comben, Jackson Archer and Callan Dawson,
Archer, I know you really took a liking to around the third quarter of the season as North were getting those couple wins and had a couple tight losses as well. The Collinwood loss, he was up against Bobby Hill and fought back, and then had a couple other starry performances thereafter.
And then Dawson, I remember having a good game pretty early.
Callan Dawson, that is. Will didn't play much after getting hurt.
You're starting to see the pieces. I just want to see more of what we saw in the middle of the season, even if they weren't quite winning a ton of games. Stay where they were. Yeah, they were competitive. There was a lot of fight. I would like to see them finish off a couple more of the closer games and just show that they know how to win.
What do you think that involves? Does that involve more so the forwards taking the next step behind Nick Larkey? Because Larkey, it was somewhat of a down year for him. He kicked 46. It was still good for a joint 7th in the Coleman. But the cast outside of him was up and down. It did help once they were able to bring in some taller support for him. Even if Bryn Teakle wasn't as productive, he freed up Larkey sometimes. He had Tristan Cherry willing to venture downfield as well. And Cherry was also one of the brightest spots for this year for North. Just he stayed healthy and showed what craft he has in the ruck, bordering on All-Australian squad.
Forward-wise, I would like to see, I think we saw pretty good growth out of Paul Curtis. I like some of the moments we saw out of Eddie Ford.
We've been on the Eddie Ford train for 3 years now.
Yeah, I want to see more consistency there. And then there have been some of those games where they've just gotten rolled and it's been defensively pretty ugly, even with some of the good individual pieces. I don't know if that's more that the midfield was getting clobbered and that kind of led to the high score, if it was just defense unable to keep up. It seems like it was kind of both.
Well, Callan Dawson was your sleeper and you liked him there. Can be somewhat of a mover also. Mine was Josh Goder, who tore his Achilles in round 1.
Unit lost.
That was a pretty sizable loss. I think might have gone under the radar for a lot of people because the tall stocks were never super settled back there. Aiden Core doesn't have at this point what it takes to be a top 2 one-on-one defender.
I don't know what this team needs to do to make that next step, but I want to start to see the results look more like the Eagles did this year. If you just win like 5 to 7 games next year
and don't get blown out,
yeah, avoid triple-digit losses and be more competitive. Just like the goal should be to be in every game at halftime. I think that would be reasonable, yeah. I mean, that probably wouldn't happen in every game. If you could do that in like 18 to 20 out of 23 games, then you'd probably feel pretty good, yeah?
You feel better about things. And North do have pick 2 in this draft, and it's a pretty deep draft. And they held on to all their picks from last year. So this is a rebuild in progress, but we'd like to see more of it actually start to take shape. Coleman was shifted around a bit near the end of the year. Do you keep him back? Where in all this does Toby Pate actually go?
I don't know. I think he's a supplemental piece. I don't think he's the most important.
I don't either, but it was just a curiosity for me. Team of the year of the Sandful in the back, and then showed some class forward. I gotta say, I was pleasantly surprised by some of Luke McDonald's performances this year.
He definitely did less derpy stuff. He had a couple of moments, but I noticed him a lot less this year. And considering how much I had noticed him negatively in the last couple, that's actually a pretty good thing.
Do you see defense still being the biggest issue for the team?
See, I like some of the pieces there now, so I don't think so. I think consistent scoring and just avoiding getting run over is the bigger issue. But I really think you're starting to see some of the pieces. We saw moments out of Charlie Lazaro. We saw, even though he was hurt, Zane Durst was showing promise. Love George Wardlaw. Dude's just a contested possession machine.
I want to see Colby McArthur do more than just get the ball a lot in the back and on the outside. What can he contribute further inward?
Yeah, I would also like to see that. And hopefully they kind of do it like they did with Sheasel, where it was like, give him, the easier assignment rookie year and then start to step it up.
Zane Dursma didn't have the easiest of times in his first year. I thought he was going to end up getting more than 13 games.
Injuries didn't help.
But also just a couple omissions as well before that. Took a great hanger in round 21, then was the sub the next week, didn't do anything and wasn't seen again. Once the season was lost, I felt like the better opportunity would have been just getting as many younger players in there into those dead rubbers for him. And we saw some, but not all of that. You saw a second potential small threat in Rob Hansen Jr. starting to emerge, which I liked.
I would think you'll see more of him in the next couple of years. I don't know if he's a main core piece, but another quality supplemental option.
We talk about all these guys supplemental, just who can take the step up and be added to that upper third or so of the list. We can see Scott and McKercher and Wardlaw getting there, and more consistency out of Jai Simpkin as a captain would be big. And we mentioned Archer defensively, but that still isn't enough of a group. How many years would you give them to figure things out?
I want to feel confident about this team playing finals by 2027. 2026, I want to see, this might not be a finals team, but they can fuck up some good teams. And then 2027 needs to be this is happening. I think that's a pretty fair and kind of generous timeline.
For the team that's shown the least life in our time watching footy.
Didn't beat a single finalist this year. Did they last year? Or who was the best team they beat last year? Because this year the best team they beat I guess technically the Suns, but that was the road Suns. Who did they beat in 23? I know they beat the Eagles at least once. I think those two split.
Freo, who didn't make finals, and Gold Coast, who didn't make finals.
The win over Freo, at least, was an impressive road win. Let's see. When is the last time North beat an eventual finalist? Richmond 2022.
Thanks, Jay Guards.
And let's be real. They were gifted that game, not by umpiring, but by Richmond. See, 2021 didn't beat a finalist.
Saints 2020 round 1.
Yeah, so your next challenge, North, is to go out and beat someone good.
This mission or team will self-destruct in 2 years. 6 of 10 down in this two-part special. And next up, it's Eagle time. Okay. Ethan, I'm going to want to hear a lot of input from you here on the 16th place Eagles, because as a member, I think my views are a bit more fervent, and as someone who's actually watched all their games.
Yeah, I watched probably 2/3 to 3/4 of their games this year.
Still, though, lower than for a lot of clubs. The Eagles finished 5-18 with a percentage of 68.1. That was the 16th best percentage after that huge drop-off from Essendon. So they're up 2 wins, 2 places, and over 15% from last year. But as we said earlier, they did not lose a game by 100, looked close in the last round. They parted ways with Adam Simpson after losing 13 of their first 16, and then Jared Schofield led them to a 2-5 record the rest of the way. I'm not sold on Schofield, especially with the lightlessness in closing round for the first half. He did manage to give some younger players more games and deliver some wake-up calls to veterans. I'm particularly thinking of how Jack Darling was dropped, helped the Eagles to a win, and then responded well at the top level. That just should have happened, a year ago?
Here's the thing.
We started out friends.
If you look at that final game, on one hand, first half was horrendous. Second half, though, they came out and showed life and actually won the second half.
How much was Geelong playing?
And they were more let's not get hurt. But still, I still think you could see some positivity there.
This is just at the start of a rebuild, and a lot of media types think it will get worse before it gets better and have them as favorite or second favorite for the Spoon next year. And I'm with them on the latter of those. I could see around 5 or 6 wins as a potential for next year, but the problem is the flag pieces that are still being held on to are really getting on the older side at this point, and how much longer could somebody like Elliot Yeo play, let alone keep up the form that they had this year? Yeo is 30, and I'd say was structurally the most important in the midfield. Might not have always had the most touches, but he was usually more composed than Tim Kelly. I think set up as a bit of a role model for Harley Reid in a good way.
Yeah, Yeo and Kelly are both 30.
And Jeremy McGovern, all Australian once again, is 32. And as much as he may want you to think it, he's not invincible. He will rack up his 200th game at some point next year in all likelihood. He didn't play more than 15 games between 2020 and 23, but 19 this year. So each of the past 5 years, he's played at least 19 games. He's been an All-Australian. And as much as Harry Cecil might be everything for North Melbourne, McGovern is everything defensively for West Coast. And you saw that even when Tom Barras was out and now gone. They won some games thanks to McGovern and then Harry Edwards being the second piece there on the tall side. Defensive group still leans quite tall, though. And aside from Brady Hoff, whose ceiling I'm not entirely sure of, as much as I like him, I really don't know what to make of the small to medium-sized defensive group
My thing with this team, after really examining what they did this season, it's probably not going to be as bad as it was in 22 or 23. That was the worst of the worst.
But it could be a step back next year still.
No, it's more, I don't see the ceiling for this team anytime soon being more than like 6 or 7 wins. Maybe 8 if you're really lucky, but it's like, whereas North, like you can see the path with what North has to be a finalist within the next few years. You see like what that core would look like, what some of the secondary pieces would look like. But this team, I do not see that. I just don't think the ceiling is that high. And, it's like, what is this rebuild really for if you don't have like the tangible, this is what we want it to look like?
Yeah, I don't see that yet from Don Pike and company, but this being his first full off season in charge, I think the vision should get more defined, and the type of assets you could both get and give away between Tom Barris and then the potential for Liam Baker to come in. Kazi Pickett seems, and who knows even about Baker. Is Frio just going to go all in and start being able to put on triple-digit wins in derbies for the next few years? Looking further at the age brackets here, Dom Sheed, 29, going around maybe for one more. Liam Duggan, 27. When he's good, the team's usually good, but he hasn't been as good as often. Jack Darling, 32. Tom Cole, 27, but honestly, I for some reason thought he was older, and I would be fine with seeing him go. Those are the other 2018 flag pieces there, plus 2021 Premiership player with Melbourne, Jaden Hunt, will turn 30 early next season.
Yeah, just like you need more players that are on like the timeline of a Brady Hawk,
who by comparison is
21.
Now, obviously, Elijah Hewitt being hurt for the entire year definitely clouded some of that, because I was expecting him to be right in there on ball alongside Harley Reid. And of course, we could talk about Reid all we want. We've really given him a lot of attention already. Meanwhile, Ruben Jinby, who is just 20 this year, made a move from the inside to halfback flank, and that worked surprisingly well. So if you've got a healthy Hewitt there to also take on that next big role at stoppage and maybe some tagging and keep Jinby there, you're starting to see something emerge. Ruck remains a major concern. Bailey J, I don't think has really what it takes to cut it anything above a B- tier. And Matt Flynn was hurt. Jack Williams, though, I like, but how much is the club actually going to give him license, and how much will he play ruck versus forward?
I liked him in that forward role. I think there was something there.
I still would have liked him to have a bit more ruck time, especially in the closing round when Bailey J was getting carved up. A nice reserve option to have, especially with questions about Oscar Allen's shoulders long term. Allen took a bit to find his footing when he came back, but that honestly didn't matter as much in terms of goal scoring, because Jake Waterman, All-Australian Jake Waterman, who knows if he stays also.
The main takeaway I have with, the buzz over guys like him, and obviously Barris is going to go to Hawthorn, considering the in-house options, like, you better nail these returns and you better draft well. That's how you accelerate this timeline.
You can't accelerate things like Hawthorn if you don't already have the draft stocks. Still waiting to see which of the rookies and younger players get some extra deals. Ryan Merrick showed well on the wing, but wasn't trusted reliably in that role. Zane True was a nice piece to add there in the middle and has not gotten the contract yet, and that makes me concerned.
It's funny, I noticed Merrick at times doing some stuff kind of leading a little bit of the movement out of the defensive 50, which isn't quite like his role.
I think he learned from Jaden Hunt there somewhat, and halfback flank to wing could be a nice spot for him. Another thing that was missing for a lot of the year, class in terms of small forwards. Tyler Brockman, mercurial, driving incident, never really consistent. Liam Ryan, totally up and down, depends on the effort he gives.
I think towards the end of the year, he took a turn in the right direction, though, after... Was it in the North game where, he was getting called out for his effort and then it all just clicked?
It might have been within that one. And then Noah Long doing his PCL hurt a lot, too. Let me guess, you're going to say it about Noah Long.
He looked like baby?
He looked like baby. Okay, no way, he's 179 centimeters, a.k.a. 5'10"?
Yeah, no.
You've got to be at least an inch or two taller than him, Ethan.
Yeah.
Smaller frame, though, so if he can bulk up a bit, like, I know you're not going to get there, but try to take after Riley Thilthorpe and what he did while his legs were compromised, then that'll help a lot because, look, you got number 13 for a reason. Also, look at where he's from. Pachuca. And Geelong Grammar. Wait, fuck. So the individual pieces are somewhat there, but were hurt. No idea what to make of some others who still couldn't get opportunities. Locke Rawlinson, your sleeper, was cited once as a sub, and then for no good reason, didn't get back up. And he showed a bit there in that one sub time he had in the against the Swans back home. And even though he only made an appearance in less than a half a footy, I'm still going to give you the win on the sleeper here.
Because yours was
Callum Jamieson, who I don't think needs to be seen again at AFL level.
No, he was bad.
I wish him well. It just didn't work. And I'd much rather see more time be given to, obviously, Jack Williams and then Harry Barnett in the ruck.
You know, Benjamin, 78% of our listeners are between 18 and 35 years old, so they probably want to start a podcast like we did.
How did you know that number, Ethan?
Thanks to the analytics we have for Spotify for Podcasters.
Formerly known as Anchor, sorry Frio fans, Spotify for Podcasters has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast from your phone or your computer. No fancy software needed.
It's so easy you can edit it while drunk.
And Spotify for Podcasters doesn't just allow you to upload to Spotify, you can also distribute your podcast on platforms like Apple, Stitcher, and more, just like we do.
Best of all, it's completely free.
Not only is it free, you can even make money from listener support or ad revenue. Hint, hint.
Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to podcasters.spotify.com to get started today.
A reminder that you can follow us on all sorts of social media platforms at Americans Footy, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Who knows where else we'll be? I know where we won't be, TikTok. Individually, I am at BenjaminHK01.
I am at Castle Media.
And Brian Harambe is sleeping at Ethan's feet. He is on Instagram, a cat named Brian. He is a frequent sleeper and a good sleeper. 3 clubs to go here, and so you didn't crack the 2024 edition. This is the third year we're doing this. I mean, it's the third year we're doing this show. Next up are the Saints. Just when you counted them out, they pulled you back in. I mean, they were done for already before finishing with 6 of 8 wins and beating 3 finalists in that time. In fact, 2 of the top 3, and making both of us look like fools to different extents.
I can never predict what this team is going to do, but I think this year I started to get more of an understanding of their personnel and their strengths and weaknesses.
It was the highs and lows of Ross Ball, and for much of the year, they weren't released at all, and it really took, the fourth quarter at the GABA for that to start changing when they ended up taking their score over 100 for the first time for the year. I mean, this team has ability to play at fast pace. They're strong rebounders. Jack Higgins is a brilliant score generator who mashed his career high for goals and got a new one in assists in a couple fewer games. Isaiah Weingeting-Millera has been given more and more responsibility out of the back. You had Darcy Wilson lead that 6-deep debutante class this year, and Wilson ended up contending pretty strongly for the Rising Star.
Hold up.
Yes, 6 debutantes. So Wilson, Ari Schoenmaker, who I know you're a fan of, Angus McLennan,
Hugo Garcia,
Lance Collard, who was suspended, and I feel bad for who we're missing. Angus Hasty. Angus Hasty was the other. Minimal time for him.
Yeah, I like this group. I don't know if any of these guys are going to be like stars, but I see a lot of guys who are already showing that they can be like quality senior level players very quickly. This group seems to have a pretty high floor.
Schoenmaker is a very good left-footed kick. Let's see more of the intercepting from him. He'd been talked up pretty strongly, even though he was pick 62, which was one ahead of Lawson Humphries.
Ooh.
Yeah, they were the third and second last picks of the draft in November. Garcia was an unused sub for the game this year, 1 of 5. And he's one who could definitely supplement Jack Steele in the center, but no one has shown an ability to take up that mantle and be the next guy. You have a lot of second-tier players and a couple who are emerging into the first tier. I'd say Nazaya leads that pack. Matthias Bilbao could get to first tier within this Saints list next year. What do you think helped him grow into games in the final couple months?
I think getting dropped actually worked out for him. I don't know how much of it was like him taking it on himself, how much of it was things that were instructed to him that he received well, but like that he learned how to impact the game outside of the forward 50 was enormous.
it was a more varied look into 50, I'd say, in the latter part of the season. You saw Tim Membry rise up for a couple big games. We'll wait to see what his contract deal is if he gets another. He should. Cooper Sharman finished strongly. You saw some more of that forward impact from Filippo, and in the final couple weeks, Wilson put on a couple excellent games. Maybe best on ground throughout the whole game against Geelong round 23. Wait, who wasn't there?
Max King.
I don't want to put this on King.
I think it was more just the way they structured things around him. And without him, you got Cooper Sharman more involved. You got Tim Membry more involved.
King isn't the be-all and end-all up forward. And in fact, I do want to see him do a bit more center half forward job because he's a good mark. I'd like to see both King twins do that. And heck, that could allow Rowan Marshall to continue to be flexible because when Marshall can be flexible and when he doesn't just yank things out of the ruck, he can be pretty damn effective.
I'd still look at trying to find another legit ruckman so that you could have Marshall and someone split time.
Looks like it will not be Jack Hayes. And Tom Campbell, a perennial emergency and my sleeper for the year, who did help free up Marshall in limited time, is also not being re-signed. So who's the second guy?
I don't know. I think you find someone who...
Or do you need just a second full ruck and instead just have King and Membry split time?
I don't know. I think to look at who could you grab off another list, but I don't know if it's a priority.
I think a bigger priority is going to be the draft and finding one of those top midfielders that you can and making the most of that compensation you get from Josh Battle.
What's a battle?
We don't know what level of compensation is yet, band 1 or band 2, so it could be right after their first pick, could be end of the first round. I'm just kind of boggled by a bidding war around Josh Battle.
Yeah, I think Battle's a good ball mover, but he's not a great one-on-one defender, which is much more of what Hawthorn needs.
I mean, they're getting the one-on-one in Barris, aren't they?
Yeah, but you've got guys who can move the ball with Amon and D'Ambrosio, and it's
Sicily and Hardwick can flex around.
Yeah, it's just I don't know what purpose Josh Battle is supposed to serve for them. I don't think he's a bad player.
I think maybe it'll just free up Josh Weddle to go everywhere, maybe? Is that the key?
I just think it's a little redundant.
Prove us wrong, Hawks. Defensively, for the Saints, of course, Showmaker will get more time. McLennan should get more. Cal Wilkie is still the rock of this defensive group. Riley, and rightfully so. Was he left out of the 44?
Yeah. ... I mean, I don't think he was as good as he was last year, but he was still pretty strong. And yeah, they seem more interested in giving stuff to, defenders who just rack up uncontested possessions instead of guys who actually are impact defenders.
Lockie Whitfield, Luke Ryan. Harris Andrews is a much bigger miss into the actual 22.
Yeah. So moving off the back, you're going to replace Battle there with hopefully just more of Schoenmaker and hopefully a healthier Liam Henry, who did play some wing stuff, but has shown the ability to move the ball out of the back.
You've got Sinclair to help in both those areas too, though he's regressed from a couple years ago.
What's a Bonner?
Riley Bonner getting delisted surprised me. I didn't think he had a good year, but I'm surprised he's just getting delisted. His round 4 game against Essendon stands out to me. 32 disposals, 17 turnovers over 1,000 meters game.
Yeah, 1,018. That's Aaron Hall shit there.
There weren't too many games where guys gained a kilometer this year. It might have been one of the only ones.
And then it was much more of a less is more the next weekend against Richmond. He was dropped for their final 3 games after being subbed out in the Lions rematch. And that's it for his time at the Saints.
Again, I don't think this is a massive loss or anything.
It just is noteworthy to us. So I think the question for us is who can be into that top tier for them.
Yeah, because the issue with this team that I have, I think they can be quite good in both 50s. I just don't see a midfield that week in, week out is going to be able to beat, a core like Port Adelaide's.
Funnily, they've been able to play teams like Port and the Giants quite tough the past couple of years.
I mean, again, Henry could do some on the wing. I love Marcus Windhager as a tagger, but I still think that's what they really have to pursue aggressively is find that top midfielder to go along with Jack Steele.
That seems like something where a first round pick will be a big deal and maybe 2 of them.
And I mean, Steele's already 28. It's not like he's entering his prime. He's probably going to be exiting his prime sooner rather than improving any further. I mean, if he does, I wouldn't put it past him, but I thought he had a pretty nice year.
And you got Nazaya emerging as a top player. You see Ken Sinclair hold on to things. Then that next group there, can Phillippo and Wilson take next steps? Can Sharman do things over a full season if he's actually given that time? Oh yeah, Ethan Sleeper didn't play and was delisted.
Yeah, James Van Ness, a lot of injuries.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I mean, this team knows how to draft, and Ross Lyon reads opponents well, but where's that next step for them, and how much longer are you given? Like, next year, I feel like needs to be a finals appearance. You want to make something before Brad Hill retires, and he's got 2 more years left in all likelihood. And yeah, that's kind of arbitrary, but within 2 years, something's really got to happen here.
I think it's very possible. Like, as of now, I would probably pick this team to be like very middle of the pack next year. I don't know if they'll be good enough to be a finalist. I think they'll be good enough to come close.
They're outside like all the major trade talk too, so I don't see a huge amount of list upheaval. So got to hit in the draft and got to see those recent picks start maturing.
I guess we'll spin again.
For the second to last time, we'll still spin when there's nobody else, because why not? 2 teams left, and we are going to the Spooners. Wow. Didn't think this would be Richmond, even with the massive number of injuries, particularly ACLs. But once the sides were clear, they started the rebuild. From 10 wins down to 2, the most losses in club history, a 30% drop from 2023 is the largest of anyone.
They lost a game by 119.
Yeah, that's not their bit, though. That's unfortunate.
It's still that it was 163-44.
Oh, right. And yet they beat the minor premiers.
Yes.
A 5-point win against the Swans in round 3. Their only other win, round 13, at the Crows, because Crom. They did lose 4 games this year by 13 points or fewer. A couple of those early. In fact, 3 of them before the bye, and the last one being North.
Yeah, if you want to look at those more closely, they played very well round 1 against Carlton. Their game at Norwood was just ugly.
Picked up some of the second half. I just remember that because of the Saints winning in Candy Stripes. Oh yeah, I didn't mention the Saints were 3-0 in Candy Stripes and also won in the Stickman.
I thought 2-0. Was it they were a third time?
Yeah, against Essendon and then in the closing round.
That's right. The round 21 loss against North, they lost. They won on X score. But yeah, this team had a ton of injuries. It's a list that even at full strength probably wouldn't be all that great outside of the midfield core, which is always hurt.
How many ACLs did they actually have this year?
A lot.
Juddy Clark, Josh Gipkus again, Michael Lafau, which was particularly disheartening for us.
He was awesome when he was out there, though. What a great story.
Yeah, mature age, rugby league convert from New Zealand, the Storm Academy, could do something, as a second or third tall forward in the future. But he was thrust into that top role because Tom Lynch, not an ACL for him, hamstring. And then the others were Sam Naismith, who has retired, and Tyler Young, spelled Tylar, who last year I thought was a brighter spot in defense, actually taking something one-on-one. They've got something defensively going forward if Young and Gipkus can get healthy, plus Noah Balta, who should stay in the back. And I think a better year overall from Ben Miller is where you got to start looking up as well. Not great, but better, more consistent.
There were a couple of fun little developments, seeing the emergence towards the end of the year of Jacob Bauer as a contested mark. Yeah, Ben Miller had some moments of encouragement. There were also moments where it's it's going to take some time here, but good for him to get some of that experience in.
And yeah, it will take time. A rebound from the Spoon could be possible next year, but I don't think much higher than 16th or 17th is all that reasonable. Given the injuries that are going to carry into next year and just the way this list is, you're losing at least 6 flag players, and I'd say 7 is more likely.
You know what, though? I like that they're going to be doing this and just probably a full rebuild instead of trying to prolong this thing.
You're thinking 2010s Phillies or Red Wings.
Exactly.
We've mentioned both on this show before. Baseball and ice hockey teams who respectively just did not let go when it was time to let go. But yeah, Shea Bolton and Liam Baker will both be going back home to the West. Bolton's requested Frio. Baker, we don't know. Daniel Rioli has requested a Damien Hardwick reunion on the Gold Coast. Jack Graham, haven't heard anything for sure yet. Has been late to West Coast, but is from South Australia. And then retirements of all of Dylan Grimes, Dustin Martin, and Marlon Pickett. at least it's happening faster than the Eagles.
Yeah, it's happening quickly. You're going to have a lot of new guys. You're going to have a lot of draft picks to work with.
You've already got the coach in.
How well they draft will tell us how long this rebuild is going to be. But I like that they haven't quite played out the string, and it's just all right, let's go, let's rebuild.
Our sleeper picks were both toward the back and more on the outside.
James Trezise, who not great. That was mine.
He was he a mid-season pickup a year ago?
Yes.
Yeah, made his debut closing round 2023. He played 7 games this year, including 6 in a row, rounds 18 through 23. I don't think we were super sold by anything there. The pressure's there, the cleanliness, not quite.
Got beaten a bunch of one-on-ones towards the end of the year.
Mine was Sam Banks, who was out hurt for the middle point of the season, but ended up playing 15 games in all and can be part of that newer group looking at the halfback flank. I think I can comfortably say I won the sleeper picks here. Yeah, not entirely sold by him, but steadier is a thing. If you can get steadier things out of Banks, Bauer, and the like, there could be something there to not keep you among the bottom 3 for long. And forward, he got some smalls emerging. Ryan Mansell, Seth Campbell, who was extended for a couple years, and when healthy, Morris Rioli Jr. could all be goal sneaks and strong pressure players, and none of them were afraid to jump either. I think Campbell's class was surprising for a lot of people, including myself.
I like watching Morris Rioli Jr. tackle dudes. He's not that big, but he's going to get his full weight into you every time.
You felt all 4 of his tackles at the closing round, in which Richmond played in the jumper he designed so that he could get a chance.
See, that was a cool thing. I feel like that's the sort of thing that just makes you feel better about knowing that this club is going to value its people. That stuff matters with retaining players, with recruitment, with everything. Just off of things like that, I'm more optimistic about the future of things at Richmond and just them getting this right than I would be with a lot of other lower tier clubs.
I'm thinking about the team we haven't talked about yet. If Tim Taranto and Jacob Hopper stay healthy, we know what they can do. They showed it at the Giants. They've showed it in flashes at Richmond. It just hasn't happened enough yet. And Jack Ross returning at the end of the year was nice too. There's something there from midfield to half forward that I think more seasoned lists and more contending teams would actually be content with. And Nathan Broad is sticking around in the back. He re-upped. He's a premiership piece that could still have some staying power for a couple more years, maybe 3. He's 31. Forgot he was a mature age pickup, but Broad and Vlostone can still form the core of the back group.
I thought Broad was just kind of all right. Jaden Short, pretty disappointing.
I think you've got somebody who can take up Jaden Short's mantle in Tom Brown, who missed the end of the season, and yet Richmond still had 6 players with B last names in their round 2014.
Brown is another one who has some intrigue in how he could play in either 50.
Again, that's what made me think Jaden Short and the long kicking ability and the accuracy is there. Went forward for a game and kicked his first 3 goals. This is another one where we want to know who can step up into that next tier. But he got a bit of a longer timeline than the Saints do. This is much more toward the start of things.
Oh, this is very much the start of the rebuild. It's going to be a few years. I just, as you finish the teardown, give me a sign that things are going to head in the right direction. And then, each year, just start adding a couple of interesting pieces.
Anything to make out of Toby Nankervis losing some battles in the ruck near the end of the year in ways that we didn't quite expect?
He's 30.
Yeah, and there's less there in the ruck than we might have thought. Down campaign for Samson Ryan. Tom Lynch is supplemental there when healthy, and who knows if he sticks around. And beyond that, question mark. Ollie Hayes-Brown, who played at UC Riverside.
I love that his Wikipedia page describes him as a sportsman. When I hear something like that, I think of 1910s Carnival strongman in the leopard pelt with the big mustache.
I'd say as of now, there are fewer tag-along premiership players here, especially with the exodus that's upcoming. Because who else do you have from those teams?
Jaden Short might end up becoming one of those.
Unfortunately, yeah, but Broad and Vlostone will still...
I like that Dylan Grimes retired and will not be one of those.
Mm-hmm.
And instead will just be remembered as good defender.
Dion Prestia aside for another year,
He can still cut. It's just he's going to pull a hamstring every second game.
And he's already 31.
Sorry, I'm just thinking now back to the Dylan Grimes thing that Kelly Underwood just kind of couldn't come up with anything else besides that he was selfless.
That's how it was for him in his final year, unfortunately. Camden McIntosh spent some time as the sub near the end of the year. He's another one of those, but
I thought he actually showed some skill. Like, I actually probably feel better about him after this season than I did about him before the year.
And that's another who's 30. So you won't have that many, and it's a matter of phasing things out properly and also just seeing what you can do in the ruck. Do you try for an Ivan Soldo reunion in free agency? He's 28, but it's a thought. He could get more time there than some other clubs.
Now that I think about it, that's the sort of guy St. Kilda should be looking at.
I actually really like that thought. If he's up for it, yeah, because he's out of contract now. And I think that's one to watch because there isn't as much in the ruck carousel this year, but there's always intrigue around it.
All right, last one.
Insert the graphic because I did spin again. What to make of the Clowns / Croms / Adelaide / who are these people?
Who are you people?
They were so close to finals last year. Had one thing gotten flipped, you could argue they would have been in.
I had said, every year there's a team that missed finals last year that makes it to the top four, and it was going to be them or Geelong. I was right.
And yes, there's an argument that rebuilds are often non-linear, but as of now, I don't see this team taking a step from 15th.
There's a difference from non-linear to an enormous disappointing step back.
And that's what this team was. They couldn't string together convincing performances, even though they went 3-1-1 between rounds 5 and 9, and the only loss was that holding the ball question against Essendon. They followed it up with 3 more losses going into the bye, including against Richmond right before,
at home no less. Like, both the Adelaide teams, those fan bases, you can tell, like, they weigh home losses very heavily.
And yet, when I think of their best win of the year, it's a road win.
Carlton?
Yes, with super sub Sam Berry, he's signed on.
That was a fun one. And it wasn't just fun because, Carlton losing. It was also just like an entertaining football game.
Yeah, 100-98, I believe. Go back and watch that one of the offseason. Individual highlights. Isaac Rankin probably would have been in the All-Australian 44 had he played one more game.
He was awesome.
But not on the field enough because of suspension and then hamstring and also concussion.
I fail to understand. When they had that little 3-1 stretch, they had been using him in the midfield a bunch, and then they just stopped doing that. One of this team's biggest successes, and one of their good coaching moves, was starting to rotate him and Josh Rochelle into the middle and keeping a healthy balance there.
By the way, Josh Rochelle has teeth.
We've talked a bunch about the whole Rochelle deal. I guess it's worth mentioning again, just in that this should have been handled internally. You shouldn't have had multiple players coming out and talking shit about him to the media. And that's a really bad reflection on the club.
Players inside and outside the leadership group there.
Look, it's one thing if these things, talk to people internally, deal with it in-house. Cool.
But when it leaks out and then also when you omit a guy over it, when he'd been one of the more valuable general forwards in the competition,
the biggest issue by far is just that this, leaked out. That can't happen. It's Jordan Dawson, captain, I guess there's a world where it makes sense for him to say something. Probably could have done it better, but why is Rory Laird coming up and saying shit?
Why is Rory Laird?
Who had actually been playing better in that stretch of the season, and then it was so deserved for him to go and get smothered on a kick in. That was really funny.
He probably would have been enough of the week if not for the guy who threw the water bottle.
I still would have picked Laird just because the other one was so obvious. It was well, this game didn't mean all that much, so you might have missed it.
Laird is one whose spot is even being questioned. By fans, of course, not by the coaches, because that's how this club works. Hand over selection to the fans and you'll probably get an outcome that we like better. Took way too long for them to get younger players in or just not give them enough opportunities until too late. Dan Curtin is one. Billy Dowling is another. We like flashes from Hugh Bond as a tagger.
I like Zach Taylor.
I was about to mention him, 3 goals in their final game, but it didn't happen soon enough.
And instead, it's guys like Lockie Murphy have immunity.
I was expecting Ned McHenry to be selected more, not because he was my sleeper, but because he just didn't have it, and yet was such a common sub pick over the past couple years.
There's just so much here that doesn't make sense.
And yet, both 50s show some promise. The combination of Darcy Fogarty and Riley Filthorpe maybe being able to take over from Taylor Walker in the next year or two. Imagine a full year out of Filthorpe after the way he reinvented himself. It's like they put him through the Captain America machine.
Defensively, I think there's reason to believe in Nick Murray. There's reason to believe in
Josh Worrell and Max Michaelaney.
I love Josh Worrell. I thought Michaelaney as a ball mover is pretty good. Okay one-on-one. Maybe you'll get something out of very large baby-looking man. Like I was going to call Patrick Parnell a very large baby, but that sounds like negative when I don't have anything negative to say. It's just, he looked like baby.
He's small.
But it's becoming increasingly obvious. I can deny it no longer. I am small.
It's also just his face. He has baby face.
Hey, he didn't get completely leveled this year once, did he?
I don't think so.
I guess that's an improvement. Your sleeper was also in defense.
James Vorlace. That's another dude who's just fucking just a large individual. I like him, and I want to see more out of him.
We described him as being somewhat of a linebacker build, and I like that thought. Played 10 games this past year, ventured forward and kicked a goal in that loss to Richmond, and he has signed on for 2 more years. So there are pieces there. Just don't go too tall in the back is a worry. I think Michaelaney does still have some value there as a small one-on-one, but you can't play him against guys who are too much bigger. Oh, and another name to think about forward, Nick Murray's younger brother, Toby.
It's like we have a lot of positive things to say about individual players here, and it's like when you look at the list, you see all sorts of things to be encouraged by, and then the big picture is just, I think it really is just a matter of like, can you get someone who can like add these parts up correctly? Because there's something here. There's something to be optimistic about. There's a lot of something.
And what do we expect to be changed in terms of club brass?
Nothing! Now get out!
Was this a good year for the Crows? Short answer, no. Long answer, no.
And do we have confidence in them turning it around?
No.
I think that's just worth a short answer.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Just like we'll believe in Essendon winning a final. How many days is that going to hit now?
A lot.
Essendon's last finals win was September 4th, 2004.
I still like the After the Siren more.
1913. 2 world wars and so much more have happened since.
That was even before the Kaiser stole the word for 20.
It's going to be at least 21 years to the day for Essendon, because the first Thursday of September 25 is the 4th. Yeah, we turned this last Adelaide segment into something against Essendon, because I feel like we've already done it to the Crows. And that's how you didn't crack the 8 for 2024.
You know what's funny? As we finished talking about Adelaide and Essendon, is like, we looked at that matchup and kept asking, why is this a Friday game?
Twice.
And then it ended up being like some of the most fun games of the year. So make that a Friday all the time. Just like, if it's a good matchup, just keep throwing it on there. You know, it's kind of like how in like developing nations that are just starting to have like sitcoms and stuff, or like Bollywood movies or Mexican telenovelas, where it's like, who do you want casted in this? Well, they were really good in this one. Let's have them play the exact same roles in the new one.
William Levy?
Pretty much, yeah. Or every Bollywood movie is like that. It's like, well, he was so good in this one, let's do the exact same thing with the next one.
I'm surprised we actually, thinking about it, never mentioned Ben Keys in terms of Adelaide. Most active year forward. See, that's another something. But what are the somethings going to be brought together properly? Next time you hear from us, it'll be finals preview time. I like that thought, but also sad that there are only 9 more Meds games this year. Does it feel like this year, despite being longer, has been faster in some ways?
Yeah, like I said, I remember when this season was, still breastfeeding. I was having trouble latching at first, but those Mommy and Me classes paid off. I wish I had done like a Zoom Mommy and Me class with Brian. Just, you just see me sitting there looking at the monitor, and then it's just like, you see me on camera? Hold him up. He's not latching.
That sounds like a kibble thing.
Kind of does, yeah. I think it would have been good.
So Finals Week 1 preview is going to be our next episode. Getting together notes for that, check-in head-to-head finals histories, which are fun. Until then, I'm at BenjaminHK01. He's at Castle Media. The furry thing is at Cat Named Brian on Instagram.
It's bath time.
Yeah, might be able to hear his bell. We are at Americans Footy on a bunch of things, and good time of day.